Hello and welcome to the daily newspaper analysis. Today we shall be discussing the newspaper of the 15th of February. But before we begin, let's take a look at the articles that we shall be discussing. This is the first column article here, Mind the Perimeter. Now this article we will be discussing because this is about the recent terrorist attacks which are largely focused on military bases. So this is important. Now coming to the second column article, this article is something that is not relevant for us from the UPSC perspective. This is about a law which Poland has passed where it is a crime now to blame the country for any Holocaust crimes or Nazi attacks. So this is something that is not relevant for us. Now coming to this article here, this is an article about the internal politics of Sri Lanka. This again is not important for us. What you need to know is the gist of this issue. The gist here is that there is a conflict, there is a political crisis in Sri Lanka because the ruling coalition government between the President Maithripala Sirisena and the Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe, they are having a conflict. This has happened in the backdrop of the recent local elections where these two leaders fought separately, fought against each other in the elections, and both these parties have lost the elections, and it is a third party which is affiliated to the former President Mahinda Rajapaksa that has won the local election. So there is a political crisis which is going on as both the parties who are in the coalition government are against each other now. Now the ramification for India will be that India has not had a good relation with the party of the former President Mahinda Rajapaksa. Now, if there is a constitutional breakdown, and if a newer government is coming into power in Sri Lanka, and if that government is under Mahinda Rajapaksa, then this is something that is not in the interest of India. So that is the entire gist which is relevant here. So we shall not be discussing this article as well. Now, coming to this article, the rating illusion. This is a very, very important article. Per se, the article does not have many details. The topic is very, very important. So I've decided that this topic I shall be covering in a separate video altogether, which will be a comprehensive video on credit rating agencies. So please watch that video separately. Another article that we shall be discussing today is about, can sanitation reduce stunting? Now this is a relationship that has been established between sanitation and stunting. So this is an important article which we will be discussing. Then these articles are not important for today, and this small article which is about the Syrian conflict is something that is important, and we shall be discussing it. So coming to the first article, Mind the Perimeter. Now as I mentioned, the context is that of the recent terror attack on the Sunjwa army base in Jammu and Kashmir, and this has killed 6 soldiers. Now before we begin, you need to know something about the background, because this is not the first kind of an attack on an army base, and this is something that is a periodic event. Many such attacks is what has happened. For example, there was the Pathankot attack in the year 2016, in January 2016. The Air Force station in Pathankot was attacked by terrorist groups. Also in the same year 2016 September, there was an attack, that is the Uri attack on the Uri army base. So this was something that was important. Another thing was the Nagarota attack, which took place in November 2016. Then there was the Panzgam attack, which took place in April 2017. And lastly, there was the Handwara attack, which was an attack on a police post in Jammu and Kashmir, and this took place in November 2017. So these attacks are something that you should know in the history, that there is a repeated history of attacks on army installations. So this is something that you need to know. Now coming to the issues which are important in this regard, the first issue, as I've mentioned previously also, is about these attacks being repeated. Not only are these attacks being repeated, these attacks are repeatedly successful also. So this is one cause of concern. That is it so easy in India to attack a military base? So those are some questions which are being raised now because of in the aftermath of such continuous attacks in the past. So this is something that is a pertinent issue. Another thing is that because of these repeated attacks, what is being highlighted is the vulnerabilities of the military installations in the country, and also the scant progress that is being made in the security of these installations. Now the perimeter security is something that is vital for any military installation, for any military base. It is vital for the confidence of the citizens in their army. So this is something that is being reflected, that are the military institutions so vulnerable? So this is something that is questioned. Another thing is that despite the fact that these are a continuous phenomenon, after the Pathankot attack, not much progress has been made in ensuring robust security of these military bases. So that is one issue. Now, another thing that you need to know is about the committee under Lieutenant General Philip Campos. Now, this was a committee that was formed in the aftermath of the Pathankot attack. And this committee had taken a security audit of all the military bases in the country. And it had identified some sensitive installations and had recommended some measures to fortify these sensitive installations. So, it is important that the recommendations of this committee is something that is implemented. So, that is one analysis. Another thing what was analyzed in the aftermath of the Pathankot attack was about delegation of financial powers to the militaries or to the different branches of the army. So that is something that was important. It was criticized that they do not have substantial financial powers, and the three services, that is both the army, that is the army, navy as well as the air force, should be given more financial powers to ensure that they can maintain higher levels of security. Now this is something that the government has ensured in the aftermath of the Pathankot attack, and despite this delegation of higher financial powers, results are something that are not still seen. So that is one issue. Another issue is that of implementation. Now here you need to know that it is not only that these provisions which have been approved by the government are not being implemented at a fast pace. Another thing is that these implementation procedures should be broad based, so as to ensure a large number of protection to the residential areas of the army bases. So this is something that should be included instead of some temporary measures. What is required is that robust implementation of these recommendations is what should be done. So that is something that has been analyzed. Another analysis is with regards to the standard operating procedures. Now, often it is being criticized that in these military bases, the standing operating procedures is something that is not being followed, which is making them vulnerable for continuous attacks. That is one aspect of this. Another aspect is that often these military bases are located in civilian population areas, so it becomes difficult for the army to counter such attacks because they have a standing operating procedure where they are not supposed to fire on civilian areas, and such kind of things is what should be looked into and resolved. So that is something that has been analyzed. Another very important analysis is with regards to the intelligence issues. Now here you need to understand that if these attacks are happening continuously, then this is also a reflection that there is some intelligence lapses which are happening at the end of the military. For example, in the Uri attack, the attack took place when the camp was very much vulnerable. Now what happened was that there is a shifting of the army recruits in the camp. So what happened is that the attack took place at a time when this shift had just happened, and that is one time in the military protocol which makes the base very vulnerable, because it is the newer recruits who have come. So this attack taking place at this particular time reflected that their attackers, the terrorists, already had some intelligence information about this change which was going to happen, and this is something that is a very secretive issue within the military. So how was this information leaked is something that has been questioned. So there are definitely cases of intelligence lapses which need to be looked into. So that is something that has been analyzed. Lastly, the analysis is with regards to the policy that the government is following in India. Now the policy in India is that India largely relies heavily on putting more boots on the ground, which means that India largely relies on recruiting more and more soldiers rather than focusing on a holistic approach, and rather than increasing or focusing more on the technology aspect of the military. So that is something that has been analyzed here, that there is a need to ensure greater capabilities of the military rather than simply increasing their number. So that is one issue. This can be done through some security drills, and the entire idea here is that prevention is the best defense. So instead of making more and more attacks or reciprocatory attacks, what is important that India should ensure that it has adequate prevention measures in all its military bases. So this is something that has been analyzed in this editorial. Indeed, the editorial is very, very important. This issue is very important. So that is the relevance. Now coming to the next article, can sanitation reduce stunting? Now the context here is that the WASH program in Bangladesh and Kenya has not proven any relation between open defecation and stunting. Now firstly, you should know something about the WASH program. Now this WASH program the full form is Water, Sanitation and Hygiene Program. Now this is also the program which is active in India. So that is something which makes it important. Time and again, governments have been saying that it is important to ensure sanitation, because if there is no sanitation or if there is open defecation, then it results in stunting in children. So if these results has not been something that is proved, so that is the analysis here. Now first and foremost, coming to the issues, First issue is with regards to open defecation versus stunting. Now, largely what happens is that we try to mug up that yes, open defecation results in stunting, but one doesn't have a clear understanding as to how this happens. Now, here you need to understand that when there is open defecation in a particular region, what happens is that the fecal pathogens increase, and these pathogens often enter children. They often impact the children. So once they impact the children, what happens is that there is an inflammation in the stomachs of those children, and as a result of which they fall prey to diseases like diarrhea. And so whatever the food that these children are consuming, the nutrition of that food is something that they cannot absorb. And as a result of which the development of these children is impacted, which causes stunting. So this is the scientific basis of establishing the relation between open defecation and stunting. So that is the analysis here. Another thing that is important is about the limitations of the study. Now, if this has not been able to prove a relation between open defecation and stunting, it could be due to many factors. For example, the factor could be a sample size that they have taken. Now in Bangladesh and Kenya, already large amounts of population is not resorting to open defecation. So the sample size that was available was small. Another thing is that such kind of studies probably requires a lot of time. It might require a study over several generations also. So at present, the cost of these studies cannot sustain for many years. So that might be a limitation because of which this relationship cannot be established. So that is something that has been analyzed. Another thing is that even if this is true, then it only brings about the complex problem of stunting. It might happen that stunting is not only happening because of this problem of open defecation, but this could be due to a complex problem. For example, some other issues like prenatal health care is something that is important. Breastfeeding is something that could, if not done, could lead to stunting. Also the diet of the mother and the diet of the child, nutrition, all of these multiple issues is what might lead to stunting. So the focus should not exclusively be on eliminating open defecation. Rather, forward and backward linkages is something that should be done to completely eliminate stunting. So that is something that has been analyzed. Another aspect which is important here is with regards to the problem specific to India. Now this problem in India is largely not about stunting itself. The problem is that in India, the burden of open defecation is very, very high. So in India, the focus first and foremost has to be on eliminating open defecation. Now, for this, the government had introduced the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, and this Abhiyan aimed at eliminating open defecation by the year 2019. But this is something that is not happening, and still at present in the rural population, approximately 50% of the rural population in India still is resorting to open defecation. So this is indeed a major challenge. Now here, what has been analyzed in this editorial is about the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan. Now here the editorial discusses that the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan largely focuses on constructing toilets, because the ideology that this Abhiyan is following is that people in India are poor, so they cannot make their own toilets. Now this is something that is being criticized. Here the author is saying that in India the problem is not that people are not able to create toilets or make their own toilets. The issue is that of a mindset, that even if they do have these toilets, they do not want to use these toilets. They have some traditional deep-rooted cultural beliefs on using toilets within their houses. So that is one reason because of which a change is not happening. So the editorial is advocating that for complete change to be ensured, what is vital is that a behavioral change is something that is ensured rather than merely construction of toilets. So this is something that is important with regards to the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan. Now coming to the issue of sanitation versus nutrition. Now what is happening in these countries is, in Bangladesh and Kenya, where there is no direct relation that could be established, that these countries are now shifting their focus from sanitation to increasing nutrition to do away with the problem of stunting. Now this is not a choice with India, because in India this problem of open defecation is so high that India needs to have a twin approach. India needs to focus both on ensuring sanitation and eliminating open defecation, along with improving nutrition. So that is something that has been analyzed. The problem of open defecation, stunting, this is a major social issue in India. The analysis with regards to a behavioral change which has been discussed is also very important. So indeed this article has immense relevance for you. That's the importance. Now coming to the next article, the conflict in Syria. Now this is largely context with regards to the escalating Syrian conflict. Now here you need to know that in the last year some developments were made in Syria. For example, the Islamic State was completely defeated in Syria. Not only that, the rebels in Syria who were rebelling against the regime of Bashar al-Assad, they were also weakened. So it was believed that till last year that the Syrian conflict is finally coming to an end. But now we are seeing that instead of coming to an end, this conflict is further escalating. Now, why is this conflict escalating? The issues that are important are, first and foremost, there is a new phase of conflict in the Idlib province. Now, this is the Idlib province, as you can see. What is happening here is that the Al-Qaeda is very powerful in this province. Not only that, the rebels are very powerful in this conflict, in this particular province. So, as a result of which, this province is emerging as the new war zone in Syria. So, that is something that you need to know. Another issue which is important is with regards to Turkey. Now, here we've discussed previously also that this is the region of the Kurdish population in Syria. Now, it was this region, the Kurdish militants, was somehow backed by the US to defeat the Islamic State. Now, successfully, the Kurdish militants have defeated the Islamic State. But Turkey, which is a neighboring or the bordering country here, has a problem of Kurdish militancy within Turkey. So now Turkey has decided that it is going to send its military to attack the Kurdish militants in Syria. So this has led to the indirect entry of Turkey in Syria. So this has escalated the conflict. This is something that you need to know. Another thing that is relevant, which is important for us, is with regards to US. Now, US had said that it is only there in Syria to defeat the Islamic State. Now, despite the fact that the Islamic State has been defeated, US has refused to back down, and US is continuing to maintain its presence in this region. This is largely because of the fourth player here, that is Russia and Iran nexus. Now, Russia and Iran are both favoring the regime, the Bashar al-Assad regime, and they are fighting against the rebels. So, just to counter Russia and Iran, US is also refusing to back, and as a result of which, these three players are leading to an escalation of conflict. So, this is something that is important. Now, another player who has entered is Israel. Now, Israel has captured the Golan Heights area since 1967. The Golan Heights area of Syria has been captured by Israel. So just to protect the Golan Heights and to maintain some buffer, Israel has also entered here. Israel and Iran are arch rivals. So again, the conflict is worsening. That is something that has been analyzed. Also, other players, especially Saudi Arabia, UAE and Qatar, they have also now participated or entered the Syrian conflict. Depending upon who they are favoring, this is again become a war zone. So this is something that is important. You need to know that why this is escalating, who all are the players here. So this is something that you need to know about the Syrian conflict. So that's the relevance here. Now, some question based on our discussion today. Please try and attempt these questions within a word limit of 150 words. So with this, we finish today's discussion. I thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you tomorrow.